Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, experts in Seoul advise President Park Geun-hye to push ahead with structural reforms this year, especially in the labor and public sectors, to produce tangible economic results. The second day of the government interpellation session focuses on the controversial issues of tax hikes and welfare programs. The ruling party is calling for the swift passage of 11 economic revitalization bills. Plus, 3 men have been arrested in New York on charges of trying to travel to Syria to join the Islamic State group and plotting attacks against the U.S. and President Barack Obama. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Thursday, February 26th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We begin at the National Assembly, where lawmakers are firing questions at the government on the second day of a 3-day interpellation session.
Now, today the questions are focused on the Park administration's economic policies, including issues regarding skyrocketing household debt, a 3-year tax deficit, deepening income polarization, and the stagnant economy. In the hot seat is Prime Minister Iwon Gu, as well as 6 government ministers overseeing finance, trade, and science. A dozen lawmakers from both political camps will be the ones asking the questions. The ruling Central Party is calling for support from opposition lawmakers to pass pending economy-related bills, while the main opposition party is urging the government to change its policy direction.
Tobacco companies in Korea may soon be forced to cover more than half of the surface of their cigarette packs with warning messages and pictures showing the harmful effects of the habit.
And the National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee is holding a plenary session this Thursday to put the revised law to a vote. Son Jung-in has more.
Anti-smoking messages cover just 30% of cigarette packs sold in Korea and are only written warnings which are easy to ignore. In line with the government's tougher policy on smoking, a parliamentary health committee is pushing to have that changed. Lawmakers will attempt to revise the law to force cigarette companies to use pictures showing the harmful effects of the habit and written warnings that together should cover more than 50% of the packaging. If passed, tobacco firms found to be breaking the rules could face monetary fines of up to $9,000. Company officials could be hit with up to 1 year in prison, or the firm could be banned from doing business. It would also prohibit the use of words like mild or light that could mislead smokers about the negative health effects of smoking. The revision is in accordance with the recommended standard of cigarette graphic warnings issued by the World Health Organization. As of July last year, 179 countries had adopted the measure, with Korea being one of them, but the rules have yet to be put in place. The National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee aims to pass the revised law at Thursday's plenary session after 11 failed attempts made since 2002. If passed, the visual warning system will become mandatory after a grace period of 18 months. Officials pushing for the move say such warnings are one of the most effective anti-smoking measures across the world. Brazil, for instance, saw its smoking rate plunge by 10 percentage points to 22% 1 year after the law was implemented. According to data by the OECD in 2014, the smoking rate of Korean men was 38%, the second highest in the world following Greece. Earlier this year, the Korean government raised cigarette prices by about $2 a pack in a bid to reduce the smoking rate. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
In the second of our 3-part series looking at what's ahead for President Park's 3rd year in office, today we're going to focus on the economy.
Yes, the government has been trying to breathe new life into the economy, but many say structural reforms need to be undertaken for those efforts to bear fruit.
Now, for more on the administration's economic successes and the challenges that lie ahead, here's our Hwang Ji-hye.
In her first 2 years in office, President Park Geun-hye put much emphasis on revitalizing the flagging domestic economy. As a result, Korea managed to keep up with the growth pace of the world economy while the employment rate reached 65% for the first time last year. The government's strong drive to boost the housing market also led to the number of home transactions to top 1 million in 2014, the largest in 8 years. Despite the improving economic figures, many are not feeling the difference. A recent survey shows that more than 9 out of 10 Koreans say the domestic economy has fallen into a state of depression. It's not surprising, says Shin Min-young from LG Economic Research Institute.
The structural problems that the economy is facing, like growing household debt and sluggish corporate investment, make it harder for ordinary people to feel the benefits of government stimulus measures that have a temporary impact on the economy.
The government has pledged to carry out structural reforms this year, focusing on the labor, education, financial, and public sectors. It's a welcomed move, but experts say some sectors need more attention.
The most important thing to achieve long-term growth is reforming the public sector. To be specific, reforms in the public servants' pension program should take place early this year so that it won't hurt the country's fiscal health.
They add that it's also critical to resolve the divide between regular and non-regular workers in order to increase flexibility in the labor market. And to push through such structural reforms this year, experts say that the government should ensure the related parties have a full understanding of their importance. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
A U.S. expert says North Korea's nuclear and missile threat is a lethal danger that continues to grow unconstrained. Van Jackson, a visiting fellow at the Center for New American Society, says the size of Pyongyang's nuclear arsenal is unclear, but the regime is moving in the direction of establishing a survival nuclear capacity. He said nothing in U.S. policy today suggests North Korea's nuclear progress will be halted, and added while a diplomatic solution might still be possible, Washington and its allies must be prepared for what he calls political military realities that follow. Jackson served as an advisor for Asia-Pacific strategy at the Office of the Secretary of Defense until last year. A North Korean shipping company subject to UN sanctions has reportedly renamed most of its vessels to continue its illicit activities. The UN Security Council's sanctions monitoring body said in its latest report that Pyongyang changed the registration and ownership for 13 of the Ocean Maritime Management Company's vessels to evade sanctions. The North Korean firm was blacklisted last July for smuggling arms from Cuba. The UN bans North Korea from trading arms as well as nuclear and missile technology in the wake of its nuclear tests and missile launches. The UN report also said Pyongyang continues to defy the Council's resolutions by persisting with its nuclear and ballistic missile programs.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has begun preparations for a key statement he will release this summer to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. In his first advisory panel meeting with experts on Wednesday, Abe requested views be gathered on issues regarding Japan's post-war contribution to the global community and lessons to be learned from its history. Attention is on whether Abe's statement will uphold Japan's remorse for its wartime atrocities in line with the general position of his predecessors. In an interview with Japan's public broadcaster NHK on Wednesday, former Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama said that key words should not be changed or removed. Other Japanese politicians are also demanding previous statements be inherited as a whole, saying repentance for Japan's historical wrongdoings is a key point of the statements. Now, Korea may be removed from the European Union's list of illegal fishing nations. Wrapping up bilateral talks in Seoul on Wednesday, Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said the EU was impressed by efforts made by Seoul to curb unauthorized fishing and showed a positive response to taking Korea off its list. Korea has taken a series of measures, including a revision to the law on deep-sea fishing that imposes a heftier fine for illegal fishing, as well as requiring that all deep-sea fishing boats be equipped with GPS tracking devices. Brussels designated Korea as a preliminary illegal fishing nation in 2013, saying it risked facing trade sanctions unless it cooperated in the fight against illegal fishing. The EU is expected to announce its final list in about 2 months.
In about 2 hours from now, Korea's Constitutional Court is set to make its ruling on the fate of the country's existing adultery law, which punishes cheating husbands or wives with a maximum sentence of 2 years behind bars. Since its introduction in 1953, the controversial law has been reviewed by the Constitutional Court 4 times and upheld every time. Critics say the law infringes upon individuals' rights to privacy and that extramarital affairs should be regulated by civic law, not by criminal law. A recent poll found more than 60% of Koreans feel a jail sentence is too harsh a punishment for unfaithful spouses. Around 100,000 people have been penalized for violating the law since it came into effect 62 years ago. Korea is planning to send officials to countries bordering Syria as early as next month in a bid to prevent Korean nationals illegally entering the country, which has become the major base of activity for the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. The officials will be discussing ways to strengthen border control in the regions with their counterparts during their tour there. Connie Kim reports.
Korea is beefing up efforts to prevent another citizen from illegally crossing into Syria, the base for the Islamic State militant group. Seoul's foreign ministry said Wednesday that a plan is in the works to possibly send officials to countries bordering Syria in order to check on the safety of Korean residents and companies in the Middle East. They may also seek cooperation on border security. The alarming move comes amid growing security concerns in the region as extremist groups have become more violent in recent months. It also comes on the heels of new intelligence that confirmed a Korean teenager who went missing in Turkey last month is in fact receiving training from IS. He reportedly entered via a Syria-Turkey border town. And to prevent such illegal crossings, Seoul has requested countries on its travel ban list to strengthen their border controls. As of now, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Afghanistan, and Yemen are on Korea's travel ban list. But the government's efforts don't stop there. Korea's travel agencies have also been advised not to sell tour packages to countries near Syria to keep citizens from being targeted by terrorist groups. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Thursday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we connect to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center.
Eunice, 3 men have been arrested in New York on suspicions they were trying to join the Islamic State group and support its work, if not in Syria or Iraq, then in the U.S.
That's right, Mark. All 3 residents of Brooklyn saw their first day in court on Wednesday after what appears to be a months-long probe by the FBI, triggered by the aspirational online posts of at least one of those suspects who said he'd be willing to kill the U.S. president if asked. Kim Min-ji reports.
3 men from Brooklyn have been arrested on charges of conspiring to support the Islamic State group. Authorities said Akfor Saeed Akhmetov was arrested as he was getting ready to board a flight to Turkey from John F. Kennedy International Airport early Wednesday. The second man, Abdurasul Jurabov, was scheduled to fly next month. The third suspect, Abror Habibov, who is the oldest of the 3, is believed to have helped finance their trips.
So the initial actions were effectively to go to Syria and attempt to join ISIL in Syria.
The two younger suspects appeared in court in New York on Wednesday, while the third faced a judge in Florida. They came to the attention of federal agents in recent months after one of them posted a message on an Uzbek language website expressing support for the extremist group. A criminal complaint showed that he also offered to kill the U.S. president if ordered to do so, as well as carry out attacks in the U.S. if he was unable to go to Syria. He repeated those very sentiments when federal agents interviewed him at his home in August last year. If convicted, they face a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. 김민지, Arirang News.
Authorities in France are still trying to determine who is behind the controls of the mysterious drones that were spotted hovering over various Parisian landmarks. At least 5 sightings were reported in a second straight night in the City of Lights, including areas near the Bastille and the French National Assembly. A drone was also seen flying above the U.S. Embassy in Paris earlier, and law enforcement officials told CNN the U.S. Secret Service was in touch with French authorities on that matter. Separately, authorities also arrested 3 Al Jazeera journalists after they were found flying a drone over a Parisian park. Prosecutors are not tying this to the landmark sightings. Al Jazeera tweeted its journalists were working on a report on the mystery drones. And in a sign of deepening economic problems, Ukraine's central bank has halted almost all commercial currency trading until the week's end. It is an effort to keep its currency from free-falling any further, which has already lost more than half of its value this year after it halved in 2014. Meanwhile, Russia's battle with Kiev moved back to matters of power as Moscow threatened to switch off its natural gas deliveries if it did not receive advance payments. This as on the battleground in eastern Ukraine, where a fragile ceasefire is holding on, government forces say they are finally observing a noticeable lull in the fighting. It said it recorded no casualties in 24 hours, a first in several weeks, as pro-Russian separatists claim to have pulled back heavy weapons from the front lines in line with the truce.
Korea's plastic card spending grew at the slowest pace in almost a year last month due to a seasonal effect, while domestic consumption remains rather sluggish. The Credit Finance Association says purchases made with credit and debit cards stood at over $44 billion in January. That's up 3.1% from a year ago. The yearly growth rate reached 9% in January 2014. The association attributed the slowdown to the Lunar New Year holiday that fell in February this year, unlike last year when it took place in January. Now, if you're a regular viewer of Arirang, you'll know all about kimchi, the side dish most people associate as Korea's best-loved food. Over the years, though, restaurants and catering firms in Korea have been using cheap kimchi from China, but Korea wasn't able to export much kimchi the other way because of a strict hygiene regulation on bacteria counts, even the good bacteria. But the trade balance could be about to change, as our Song Ji-son reports.
China's Health Commission has announced that it will revise regulations applied to salted or pickled vegetable imports. Previously, the rules only allowed fewer than 30 E. coli counts per 100 grams, but it will now allow a count of up to 8,000 E. coli counts. Kimchi, Korea's fermented dish, rich in lactic acid bacteria, could not meet the old regulation, but it will be acceptable under the new rules. The only kimchi allowed to enter the Chinese market until now were fried or sautéed varieties, processes which sterilize the bacteria. Over the past couple of years, Seoul has been demanding Beijing set up a separate guideline for the kimchi or ease the standard applied to fermented food. In the meantime, Chinese kimchi imports to Korea surged to over $70 million in 2013, with an annual average of 200,000 tons used by large restaurants and catering services. While most kimchi factories in China are run by Koreans, Chinese kimchi is quickly taking over Korean tables as it is 5 times cheaper than Korean-produced kimchi. The Korean staple is classified as an extremely sensitive item in the recently agreed free trade deal between Seoul and Beijing. Its current 20% tariff will be reduced to 18% with the pact, further eroding the price competition between the Korean and Chinese produce. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, global tech giants like Google, Apple and Samsung are racing to develop their own mobile payment services. In the latest move in this war, Google is reportedly going to announce a new payment method. It's called Android Pay and it's due out this spring. Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Gone are the days of paying for things with cash or plastic. Your smartphone will soon pay for whatever you need. Google is reportedly going to announce a new payment method called Android Pay in May to boost its Google Wallet platform. Android Pay is expected to allow users to upload their credit or debit card information to the app for single-tap transactions. Ars Technica reports this will make it easier for third-party apps to use the near-field communication chip that's installed on Android phones. This is Google's latest attempt to rival Apple Pay, launched last October equipped with fingerprint verification technology. Instead of punching in a PIN number, users press the iPhone home button while placing the device on a reader. To develop a similar contactless payment method, Google acquired SoftCard, a mobile payment app jointly created by major U.S. wireless carriers AT&T, Verizon Wireless, and T-Mobile USA. With the acquisition, Android phones sold by the three wireless carriers will pre-install the Google mobile payment system starting later this year. The U.S. search giant is expected to make the installation of the app mandatory for all Android phones sold in the U.S., a move that's sure to annoy Samsung Electronics, which is pushing for its own mobile payment service. The Korean tech giant is expected to feature what's tentatively being called Samsung Pay on its upcoming Galaxy S6 smartphone next month. The company's vice chairman Lee Jae-yong met recently with Peter Phil, the co-founder of the online money transfer company PayPal. Although the meeting was disclosed, various reports say the two discussed the Korean tech giant strategy and financial technology. Their meeting comes a week after Samsung Electronics acquired LuPay, a U.S.-based mobile payments technology startup, indicating its own ambitions in the realm of contactless payments. U.S.-based market tracker Forrester Researcher estimates that the global mobile payment market will grow $200 billion annually to more than $900 billion in 2017. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, many of us are still getting used to the idea of 3D printing, but now 4D printing is starting to make its way to the fore. With this 4D technology, materials can assemble themselves when they come into contact with some other substance. It seems that nothing is really impossible these days. Shin Se-min tells us more.
With a 3D printer, you can create models of just about anything you can imagine. 3D printing is being used in a broad range of applications to make everything from toys and industrial parts to biological materials, leading to a third industrial revolution. While some of us are just getting used to the concept, a new 4D technology has appeared on the horizon that gives 3D printing new capabilities. A string of plastic moves by itself to form letters upon contact with water. A black sheet clinches up into a cube or a ball when submerged in water. This is 4D printing technology. It prints out reconfiguring programmable materials that self-assemble when needed, giving life to inanimate objects.
The ability to program physical and biological materials to change shape, change properties, and even compute outside of silicon-based matter.
Although the technology is in the early stages of development, experts believe the possible functionalities are endless and could be used in fields like the military, medicine, or construction. The U.S. plans to pour $30 million into 4D technology development this year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Unlike the spring lake temperatures we had yesterday, will be much chillier today. The daytime highs in the central region will be 8 to 9 degrees lower and only peaking at 4 here in Seoul, so dress warmly before heading out today. In the meantime, most of the southern provinces will still enjoy mild readings today, so let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. So while the daytime high here in Seoul will only peak at 4, the daytime high in Daegu and Busan will be rising to 11 and 14, while Gwangju tops out at 8. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will rise to 9 and 6, and Dokdo tops out at 8. Now, there will be a big drop in temperatures tomorrow morning. The low will be kicking off at -6 here in Seoul, and the high will rise to 3. And we're looking at a slight chance of nationwide rain on Sunday. Well, that's all I have for you today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Well, thank you very much, Jian, for the weather, as always. And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us at the same time on Friday. Thank you for watching.